Yes. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am your lovely host, Rin, from Rin's Art Cafe, and with me today I have the lovely Miss Ogechi Musa. Before we begin, I have a bit of a disclaimer. Do not send hate to anyone featured or mentioned in this interview. If we happen to talk about topics that is not suited for you or anybody else who you're watching this with, you may leave and watch something that is more suited to your watching habits. With that being said, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And when commenting, please keep it respectful in the comment section. Thank you. So, Miss Ogechi, can you tell the viewers a bit about yourself?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Rin.
You're welcome.
And who am I? Let's see here. So I am a 28-year-old filmmaker based in LA, and I am a Black woman of Nigerian descent, Nigerian American. Um, is my origin, first generation. I am a believer. I'm a dreamer. I am a sister. I'm a good friend. I am me. And it's difficult to fully answer that right now because I'm evolving, and I'm constantly learning and constantly growing. And that's really my goal every day, is to grow and learn. So I think that it's hard for me in this moment to be like, who am I, because I've just really begun to grow and begun to really understand myself completely, and I'm on that journey right now, and I just know that I'm going to get there pretty soon, just because things are really coming together of my self journey, yeah, to further enlightenment and whatnot, if that answers your question.
So, I've been looking at your website, and you stated the words death of a scientist
Yeah.
and birth of an artist.
Hmm.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Oh yeah, most definitely. So for most of my life, I like to say that I was living a I guess I was living a reality that wasn't necessarily mine. I was born into a family of high expectations, being that my parents were Nigerian immigrants. Education was always the number one focus and intention for all of our lives, is to seek higher education, because that's why they came to the US. So we were reared with very strict, I guess, a strict foundation on valuing education. So, we all kind of figured out what we liked, and they saw what we were good at in school and whatnot. And I was on that path of becoming a doctor. So in high school, got good grades with, the sciences, and took that into college. It just made sense that I was going to be pre-med. And I did have my own intentions of being on that path, because I really did enjoy it. I enjoyed all the sciences, biology, neurology, and neuroscience as well. That was a big subject for me in college that I truly enjoyed. Loved learning about the brain, and connecting that to all types of different connections within our systems as well as externally. And I just really I felt like I was living up to this portrait that was painted of me, but I didn't brush those strokes. Those weren't my colors. That wasn't my image. So it was this image that, my parents started to paint, and then peers started to add to that painting. And as I was mentioning to you earlier, it was this label that I was living up to, and this kind of perceived person that everyone had a little tad bit that they wanted to add to that portrait, you know? So it was really a matter of taking that portrait and completely burning it, you know, completely burning it. And that's the first time I really expressed it in that way, because there had to be a death of that. There had to be a kind of a removal, you know, that life needed to kind of be generated into another type of energy, into a newer source, you know. So burned it, took those ashes, kept those ashes, because you can't completely leave certain things behind, and decided to kind of grow anew. Maybe sprinkle that at the bottom of, I guess, like a plant, you know, kind of like at the bottom before you put the soil, because it's still there, because you can use things decompose, and that can be used for new life. So it was a matter of killing that older self, because it wasn't who you truly were. You know, you're living up to these labels that your parents had, that your friends had, and letting that go. You know, you could keep parts of that if you'd like, that were actually you, and then growing into a new person, yourself, and really being in tune with your spiritual energy as well, and who you identify with and who you're comfortable with as yourself. And for me, that was an artist. And it was something I always loved to do. Always wrote, you know, I've always been a writer. That's what I've always said. Always been an actress. I've always been these things that I am now, which is why I said you don't completely let go of the past, because there are parts that are truly you. Keep that, you know? So I kept those parts and I let it grow. So it was the death of a scientist and the birth of an artist, because I decided that I needed to be me, for me, by me. So that's that whole concept. And it really freed me. It freed me, because I was living a lie to an extent. I was lying a lot too, because I was really trying to keep this label. I was trying to keep that portrait alive for the sake of everyone else. So it was such a transformation, which is why I'm saying I'm always evolving, because that wasn't too long ago that I decided to burn that portrait.
Like a phoenix, in a way, you rose out of the ashes, and you know what's best for yourself. Nobody else can say that,
Yeah.
and nobody can guide your life for you
Mm-hmm.
except yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. You got it.
So, in what direction are you going now? Like
Yeah.
your occupation and what you're most passionate about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I still kept some of the old, and that I feel like I always loved the sciences. So I actually still have a career in the sciences. I'm a healthcare IT analyst, and I also train healthcare EMR programs. And I work in hospital settings. I work in outpatient settings. I still work with nurses and doctors. You know, it's still there, just because I truly did love that. And I haven't found the financial support in my artist career that would really just warrant me to let that completely go, because of my responsibilities that I have with things that I'm, you know, supporting, projects I'm supporting back home in Nigeria, people I'm supporting back home in Nigeria, and just sustaining this lifestyle, being able to support myself while I'm funding a project, or while I'm gathering casting crew, paying casting crew. You know, you have to have some capital. So it's helped me build that capital, and it hasn't really, I haven't just thrown away all those years of studying and understanding, and the knowledge is still there. And I'm just transforming it into how I want to use it, you know? So I'm still doing that. And especially amidst everything that's happening in the US with the healthcare system, I kind of was called back to that role during everything that's happening right now. So I think that it's important to support the essential workers. And I always, you know, it's a specialty, it's a skill set. And I wanted to do that because I truly did enjoy working with doctors and all types of providers and clinicians and teaching them. So I'm still doing that when I can, doing it remote and whatnot. And then I'm also, of course, my artist career is kind of kicking off in a new trajectory right now, just because Friction is literally life. It's what you see on TV. It's what you're hearing in the news. It's what we are fighting for is kind of all ingrained in my film, my debut feature film, Friction. So that's kind of risen back. And I just finished my documentary. I was documenting for the past 5 years a art collective group in Cleveland, and they're all conscious storytellers. So there's that documentary on the rise. I shot a short film that's in post. So there are projects here, and doing some production coordination for a virtual production. So both careers are popping. and I'm just trying to grow with them and continue to grow and learn.
Because in most cases, some people have to either leave their artist career and just go for a stable job, and not everybody can balance that.
Yeah.
I might even have like to ask you some questions in the future when I come to that point where I might have to choose as well.
Oh, most definitely. I'm always here for you. I love guiding the youth. I love guiding everyone. You know, my executive producer is a couple decades older than me, but she's like one of my best friends. Like our knowledge and our spirits are, you know, there's no time limit to that. There's no age, there's no spiritual age. So I think that's important to connect with anyone at any point of their journey. And I will more than happy to be able to provide you with any type of support, any type of advice, because it's going to be a journey. Balancing has been hard. I've had to make sacrifices. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In one of your in a clip I saw in the interview reel in Ibn had made, you said you're like a voice for many people. Oh, like, can you tell us a bit about that? Does that also have to do with the documentary?
Hmm.
That you're helping other people, you're guiding the youth.
Yes, most definitely. I think the whole point and the core of my filmmaker mission statement is to be able to be a platform for the marginalized. So the marginalized communities that are voiceless, you know, that do not have that way of expressing their stories. And that's so important to tell everyone's stories, because that increases the perspectives that people are exposed to, which evokes empathy. So there's a psychological basis to my my filmmaking mission statement. There's all of my entities and my past selves and my past learnings are kind of entwined with my current mission, and that's really to evoke empathy. So I try to tell as many stories as possible with multiple perspectives for that reason, just because it's important to hear from everyone. And that's the issue with our society, is that we oppress so many voices. We oppress so many beings, so much light. It's like, why are we oppressing this light? Why are we hiding this light? And I want to let it shine. You know, it's important to shine everyone's light, because we all are worth it. We all are worth our opinions and our values and ourselves. Every single person, you know, deserves a chance to speak and to be heard. So if I love filmmaking, you know, I love directing, I love producing, I love it all. And it just provides that platform, because someone might not have that platform if it weren't for being put in front of a camera and asked a question a certain way. Like, even with the documentary, there were conversations that I facilitated that's changed my life in 2020. I went back there, I think almost a month ago, and I was in Cleveland, Ohio. And everyone was kind of still quarantined, of course, but it's, you know, we were being safe, completely COVID compliant, you know. And one thing that I realized was that these people I'm interviewing and bringing together are having these conversations for the first time, because everyone has been separated. They haven't had that chance. Even a chance is a platform, you know. Platforms can come in many different ways. And giving them that opportunity to speak to each other about these issues, it was mind-blowing what came up. It was just so moving. And it definitely changed me. It gave me so much insight. So I learned from, you know, being a platform. I learn from everyone, and it's helping me grow as well. It's always mutual. Even if it's not mutual, even if I interviewed a few people I didn't agree with, and I'm like, this is what you think? Okay. All right.
You're
All
here
right.
to understand the person, like why they think that way,
Right.
and it will help you understand others as well who think in a similar
Exactly.
way, so you can perhaps even modify, not doesn't have to modify something, but
Mhm.
find a way to create a middle ground
Yes.
for these people, so everybody can feel at, they don't have to feel at home, but they feel like they're being heard.
Yes, yes, exactly. And it's so important. It's so important that we hear exactly like you said, because now I'm understanding certain perspectives to another degree that'll help me show them the light of others. Because them not, that I see how their opinion is blocking other people's light because of what they're thinking. And I'm like, oh, I see a way in here. I see a way to show them, no, 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 look at their perspective. Let's open this door up to that person that you are oppressing and completely silencing. So it's so important.
And I like that approach because other people have just been uh, either yelling at these people
Yeah.
or being very rude to them, like, hey, you're stupid for thinking this way, or you're stupid for thinking that way. You can't help the other person see
Yeah.
the other's perspective that way. You're just gonna get them to want to block it out more. They're not gonna open up to it
Exactly.
because they don't feel safe. They feel attacked.
Yep. And I was a victim of that. And I was also the criminal. I have been that way. That's why I'm like, it was such an experience because I saw myself in some of these opinions. I saw myself blocking other people's light because I didn't believe in their light. But I'm talking light is an opinion. Light is what you think. That is your knowledge. That's your perspective. And I think that it's important because it can be seen as darkness. I'm trying to say it's everyone's light because it's shedding a light on their own mind, even though it's not shedding light on other people's opinions or shedding light on issues that need to be exposed. It's their own personal light. So that's why I like to use that verbiage. Just of recent, I've just been calling it in general, everyone's light, just to eliminate the negative aspect of how wrong this process can go. And because I've been there and I did that. And I blocked people's opinions. I blocked people's light and they were offended on that. And it was because I have white people in my life that I definitely had to really, I don't want to say check, but had to confront in a kind way. I had to get to that kind place because it was not kind in the beginning. And yes, I'm going to say that because it was unapologetic, which is a way to be. And I think that's what you're speaking on with people yelling at each other, saying that they're wrong. But it doesn't leave room for true growth. It doesn't leave room for it because that person is blocking that. They're like neurologically blocking certain things. They're not receiving anything. The receptors are blocked. So it's like, how are they going to receive any type of synapse? How are they receiving the nutrients if it's blocked? So there's a lot about that. So it's so important to try to move with love. And that's what that documentary showed me, because who I was following was moving with love and kindness. And I was just so moved by it because I hadn't been.
So, what inspired you to write Friction? Like the title, and why did you choose that title per se?
Yeah. Well, huge inspiration was Signif. Signif is this musician who's amazing. And I've been calling her, I've been like getting my energy out, trying to summon her energy back into the music industry because I'm not sure she's in it anymore. And it's so sad because her music was so powerful. Hip hop artist, she was based in New York, from Milwaukee. And her music is conscious storytelling. She had this. It was protest art. She's this specific album that she was releasing. I was approached by my filmmaker mentor and someone I always praise because of how he's guided me in this industry, Darren Cole. And they've worked together. Darren and Signif they worked together in the past. And he was like, "You're dope at writing." He told me I was dope at writing. I was dope at directing. And I hadn't even done anything. He gave me that encouragement and brought me to the table. So he brought me to the table. I met Signif, listened to the album. So the music inspired me to write, to start this story, and then it evolved from there, because once I started doing the research, once I started to listening what she was saying about certain systems of oppression, I started to do the research, and I started to realize I had not been taught anything. I had not, it wasn't in my curriculum. And I went to very good schools. They were PWIs, predominantly white. And I was teaching myself because I had an assignment. And it became way more than an assignment after maybe the first month, after listening to her album. Her album moved me to the point of realizing what I had been taking, realizing how I have been oppressed, realizing the racism that was occurring constantly on a daily basis with me, within certain friends of circles, within certain institutions. I was going to Boston College, that's institutionalized racism. They're not here for us. So there was such an awakening of seeing so much through researching and through learning more about what was in the music and being moved to really do that research. So it started with Signif's album. And then I started writing, we started filming, and then George Zimmerman was not indicted. He was set free. And he was the murderer of Trayvon Martin. So when that happened, I couldn't stop, because what I was writing, the story I'd created based off of just listening to the music, I created that. I was like, let's have it be an issue of police brutality. That is a huge thing. It came up a few times, maybe once in one of her songs, maybe a couple times in one of her songs in the album. And I'm like, police brutality, that's what I want to tackle. That's what I drew from that album, because there was a lot of things that were mentioned. And then that occurred. So Trayvon Martin's murderer being set free, I remember bawling in my apartment, my basement apartment. And it was 2014. It might have been late 2013, early 2014 kind of thing. And I had taken a year off of school. And I had already written most of Friction, and we were starting to shoot. At the time, it was just a short film. And I decided I had to make Friction. That's the moment where I was like, I'm not stopping. Because at some point, I could have stopped. Because there's a lot of things where like people were dropping from the project. And we already shot certain things. We already auditioned people. I was overproducing. I had been starting to like put pieces together, but one big piece dropped, another big piece dropped. And then George Zimmerman got set free. And I said, I don't care. I'm carrying all these dropped pieces and I'm bringing this home. So that's when I took up like all the hats. The actress who was supposed to be the main actress dropped. So that was a big drop. But then I was like, well, there's this dream I had of acting when I was a kid, and I've always wanted to act. So yeah. So it was those two. I want to start with those two because there's more, of course, that fueled the script, but those two really, really inspired Friction, Signif and Trayvon Martin.
It worked out pretty well from what I saw.
Thank you.
Your message was communicated through the art of film very well.
Thank you. Thank you. I was really passionate. Again, teary-eyed. That's why I'm like, hold up. Thank you, though.
Like, you were able to show people the many perspectives, that it's not just like us versus them, but who is them? Why are they acting this way?
Right.
And that there are people, even if you are with them, even if they're on your side, they have like their own personal things that happen to them.
Yep.
And at a certain point, sometimes they themselves get consumed by grief.
Yes. Yeah. Oh,
and it blocks their vision, and they don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And the main character, she wanted to go for revenge.
Yes.
Be-
Hmm.
because stuff like with the police, it's confidential, like why this happened, why that happened, and they're not gonna just say it like that. It can make the police look bad, or when people find out this was very careless, especially in your movie, film, sorry,
Hmm.
film, um, the older cop and his younger deputy, the fact that he was actually trying to look at the case file, and the other one was just like trying to egg him on.
Yep. Yeah. That was a huge example of that scene. Really, really shows you this code of silence and false brotherhood. Hmm.
You're not really gonna see that in the media, what they talked about there. um and I'm glad that you brought that up,
Yes.
because that's one of the big problems. It's the system.
Yeah.
They're supporting it, even if they don't agree with it.
Yep.
They stay silent.
Yes. And silence is a killer. And it's also a motivator. It's a motivator to stay and enable the status quo. And specifically with the police, like the policing history in this country, in America, the roots of it. The roots are rotten. What do you do? I love to garden. What do you do when the root is rotten? You pull that. You pull it out. Because what's gonna yield from that rotten root? It's diseased leaves, it's rotten fruit, and that's the system that we're living right now. That's what we're seeing right now. So it's not one bad apple, it's the rotten root of the police force in America. That is what it is. And I feel like that's what I really wanted to bring out in Friction as well. Try to do it subtly. And that's really just been the whole push and the whole intention behind most of my artwork is to expose that the root is rotten and things need to be completely deconstructed and abolished because of the rotten root. And like you said, the cadet or the younger officer, he really represented the system and how it kind of eggs on and how it encourages this false, I guess, this falselyhood of communal, protection of each other, protect the blue. But the roots of policing, it was all due to, it was literally slave catchers. Like that's the core of policing. They were slave catchers. In 1816, when, policing started after the 13th Amendment. And like I said earlier, the 13th Amendment, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the U.S. And it's that exception, the punishment of crime, slavery is allowed. So the history of policing, and that's literally the 13th Amendment is, the slaves were freed, this amendment occurred. That amendment said, all right, y'all are free, but if you're punished, you can still be a slave. And that is the form of free labor, because for slavery, that was free labor. That literally, that was our economy. That's how things were run. So if things were run in that rotten way, you got to truly abolish that. So that's what we're really exposing now, is what this is really, that's what the movement's all about. That's why it's like, you guys got to read. Everyone read more, educate yourselves. It's really bringing out the core root. The rotten root is what we're trying to have people educate themselves on, to truly see that this system it's not the way. It's not the way.
Yes. And the prison system in the US,
Yeah.
it's based off of that. It's
Yeah.
corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
The prisons are running like businesses in a
Yeah.
way as well. They take all the money, and they I haven't really heard about that many prisons actually rehabilitating the prisoners, or like some of those laws that lock up people for like petty crimes.
Yep.
Like, for instance, possession of marijuana.
Yep.
Like, they get 20 years
Mm-hmm.
for, and they were probably weren't even in like a drug cartel or something like that,
Yep.
and they get to sit there in there a lot longer than people who actually commit crimes, very heinous crimes.
Mm-hmm.
And that I don't really see anything that that's really talked about that goes more towards rehabilitation. They're just making money off of these prisoners.
Yep. That's
They,
exactly.
in the
Mm-hmm.
U.S., they probably get better food and a better place to stay, but they still, regardless of that, they're still being used as free laborers.
Yep. And it's just going back to the corrupt core, and it being August, it is Black August, and Black August is a time of remembering and commemorating these political prisoners. So yesterday I was at a Black Lives Matter meeting, and we were writing letters to Rochelle McGee. Rochelle McGee, and he is a political prisoner. That's what this whole month is about recognizing, honoring, commemorating, and really bringing light to what has occurred from decades ago. So Rochelle McGee is still in jail, and like you said, these petty crimes. He's still in jail for $10 worth of weed. That's how he got locked up. $10 worth of marijuana. In 1963. And since 1963, he's been a political prisoner due to things that he has done. He was part of the rebellion in California that Black August is known for. And it's in the 1970s. So the assassination and the imprisonment of the Black Panther, George Jackson. So during that prison rebellion in California, they were really defending that assassination of George Jackson. And it really just reflects what occurred in that Stanford prison experiment as well. How you cannot push someone, how imprisoning a mind, how what we're doing is evil. What we're doing is pushing people to it's killing our souls. It's just evil, There's not too many words I can say, because it's just it's inconceivable,
Yeah.
And I feel like it's hard to even think about. Like, if you think about it, it's so disheartening, You're like, what is going on? But it's important to speak about these people. It's important to know George Jackson. It's important to know who Rochelle McGee is. It's important to really know these real lives, because what my film it was fiction. It's fictional, but it's based off of everything that's happening right now. So that's why it's important to do the research to know people are still in jail. This is literally still happening. Look at, open your eyes, people, So it's really, it's just imperative to accept the knowledge, accept it. There's this mass denial that our culture really enables, because it's about denying what's so uncomfortable and so disheartening that we're not addressing it. When there's a mass denial, there's a mass rejection. There's a mass, like, just misinformation. There's a mass betrayal of humanity, and it's just so imperative to know what's going on.
Misinformation, and
Yeah.
we've noticed that this can actually cause a lot more harm. Like, if stuff like certain elements have been left out of the story, very
Yeah.
important elements,
Mm-hmm.
you can motivate more violence, more disconnect between people.
Right. Yep.
So, what do you have as a solution for that?
That's a great question. I think I also tackled misinformation and friction, because Elle received misinformation about Alex's findings. So that was kind of underlying. It's just so layered. And that's one thing that exactly what you're saying. I'm not sure if you were thinking of that example of my film, where Elle was misinformed, but it's still the misinformation in that case was true for other officers, right? Not specifically for this officer who murdered her brother, but it's true for the system, right? But it was used to fuel her anger in a negative way in order to push her to the point of retaliation. But that is what we're all pushed to. Like, Elle really reflects so many people who are grieving time after time, this plight, the plight that we're going through time after time. 1963, Rochelle McGee, for decades, right? So it's really a matter of addressing the core root. That's what you got to do. So if you're not trying to, be misinformed, how do you handle not being misinformed, right? Was your question? It's finding the resources, multiple resources. It's increasing your perspectives. It's really seeking the knowledge. Ask. Always seek knowledge. Always seek knowledge from everywhere. Ask the questions. Ask those uncomfortable questions that don't get asked. Question certain things that you're seeing. And that questioning will lead to you finding more answers, not just one answer. Because just one answer is what misleads people. That's when you're misinformed. But if you have a collective, experiments, you're not just experimenting on one person. You have a lot of different subjects. You have a lot of different sources of data and sources of information. So you got to increase your source of information. That's how you can combat misinformation, just because there is so much happening with the media. We can't even touch upon that. I don't even think we're allowed to touch upon that on this setting completely, with things happening in your government, things happening in my government. Come on, it's corrupt that we can't even speak on it. We won't even get into that for the risk of your safety and securing your future. And that's what we have to do. We have to conform in those ways, which is unfortunate. But I think it is finding multiple sources. What you're doing, you're asking me, some, random filmmaker in America, trying to defund the police. So it's great what you're doing as well.
Thank you. I like having different kinds of perspectives on this channel.
Yep.
Perhaps someone is against defunding the police and they explain why.
Right.
So people get to understand why you think this and why the other person thinks that, because an experiment, it's like an experiment.
Yeah.
You're looking for answers, but what you get isn't always what you expect. You get that aha moment, like, I never knew I could that this was like a thing, for instance.
Yep.
And I found it interesting that in the movie Friction, the film Friction, I'm not sure why I keep saying movie.
That's okay.
Even though I'm used to saying film a lot more.
It's all right. We're all learning.
That the children were being used for the cause, for the movement as well. I found that very interesting.
Yeah.
Children were supposed to be in schools. They were supposed to secure their future.
Right.
But they also were taking part of this movement.
Right. That's a great point. People love that part. Well, just because it's so controversial, and it's a discussion that needs to happen, because the role of the youth, right? In this case, Marco really got young. And, historically, sometimes certain institutions, or not even organizations, sometimes criminal organizations use children because they can't get sentenced a certain way. Right. So that is historically, sometimes children are exploited in that way. So there was this underlying tone of that as well. But ultimately, Marco also had this beautiful intention as well, which was, I'm educating you more than what the schools are educating you in. That was a line that people sometimes forget when they have negative opinions about Marco's use of the children. But he said, what you're learning with me is what you need to learn. That's a huge part, because he said, you're not learning what you need to learn in our current educational system. That's what I want people to take away from that too. He's saying, this is where I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach you how to make money. I'm going to teach you how to use your money for a cause that you are into. I'm going to teach you about what's occurring, what is wrong in our society. I'm going to show you, and you're going to be a part of it. Because when you're not a part of it, you're removed from it. And you feel as if you're not part of something. He always said, so another line, he explained, he said, when people see the children out there, they are reminded of the movement. They're reminded that this is affecting the children. The children are speaking. The children are going against us. The children are raising money. What am I doing as an adult? So it goes deeper than that, and you have to hear it from the filmmaker, because it's like I couldn't put that all in the film, but I wanted to bring those intentions out, just because Marco also went on a path. He always had positive intentions. He did, but once again, it kind of, when you're placed in a situation and a system, you're gonna see a lot more about the human behavior and the human mind and what occurs based off of being in a system, in a situation, as we saw and as we chatted about with the Stanford prison experiments. You put people in a situation, in a system, and you're balancing the role of power and how that influences their behaviors given that situation in that system. You're going to find things that you never thought you would. So Marco found out he was someone he never thought he was. Elle found out she was someone she never thought she was, because she was put in a situation in a certain system. So it's really reflective of, how are we going to stop these situations? How are we going to fix, destruct, destroy, dismantle, and regrow certain systems so that people are not put in these situations that lead them to the end of friction? Mic drop. That was great. Thank you for that question. That really brought it together for me as well.
You're welcome. Like, Mark, he was with the kids. The kids were putting themselves in danger as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you had the little kid Pierre. He was like he felt like
Right?
second in command. Like, he was talking to like the kids and like trying to get the other French people to join in.
Yeah.
Like, I found that adorable, but also a bit like in the context of that story, questionable.
Yeah.
The way he is, from what he is seeing the adults do, and the way he is developing himself. He's trying to make all these connections, and his mind is about money. Like, and that's in like the first half of the film.
Yeah.
And it's all about making money. And the kids as well, they were like, they were worried about losing their job, even though that girl was stabbed by a homeless person. So Marco was actually teaching them street smarts.
Right.
Something they wouldn't learn at school.
Right. Right.
Because anything can happen that might stop some kids from attending school. Then what are they going to do? They might be too young to get a job or something, or people aren't going to be hiring younger children.
Mm-hmm.
So how else are they going to earn money to support perhaps themselves or a family member?
I'm going to grab a charger really quickly. This one just, like, I don't know what's happening to this one. Give me 1 second. I got to switch chargers. 1 second. Shoot. Oh, we're good now. Yay. Okay. I just had to switch outlets. I think that one just blew. I've been editing. So many hard drives are occurring. But yes, back to that. That's a great point about Marco and Pierre. Go ahead. I didn't want to. Did you finish your point?
Yes, I finished it.
Okay, cool. Because I was really excited to respond to that. And that's a great point that you brought up. And I think that they were put in danger. They were. And it's also reflective of how we are all in danger. Even him literally putting them in danger was not right. That was corrupt. That's Marco's he's kind of he's not I don't know how to phrase this, but the most ethical. Let me say that. Definitely not condoning his actions in that way. I don't want to also say that I can't say that he's the villain of the. No, it's hard for me because I have a appreciation of Marco as well. But he has the whole mentality by any means necessary. And I think that's even more seen with using the kids. But like you said, you brought out the danger of it, but then you also saw there is a positive aspect of preparing them for life, preparing them for when their degree doesn't matter in biochemistry and they don't have that job. What else do you have? And he really showed these children their different attributes. But I think that it's such an important conversation to have, the children in friction, and it really stems into a lot of different concepts of youth involvement, because then at a level he also encouraged L as a student, so he was doing multiple. He was just he really mastermind things in ways that can be really seen as negative, but as well, let's take the positive out of what he was also masterminding, because he at every level he raised up the voice of the voiceless. And another thing, those children, most of them were from they were foster children. Most of them were foster children. So it was corrupt in a way to have this opportunity of money, having this opportunity of, hey, you're living off, you're in a system right now where you do not have parents, you don't have that financial support, and you have to live on your own. You have to fend for yourself. And most of those children that he did hire were foster children. And that's a whole nother level of the film and of the concepts that were brought out, with not having that familial support and him being that for them. Elle being that motherly support when she went to the hospital. Elle having to sign out, that was huge too. That she had to be and actually kind of pose as the legal guardian. So that was a part of that as well, how they didn't have anywhere else to turn, and Marco provided them this. That's what he provided. He provided being part of something, and that is a huge notion with being a member of something and these organizations. It can, yeah. Good. I mean, these are great questions. I haven't been
Also
asked.
have that whole power dynamic actually, like especially with Marco being like in control of all of this.
Yeah.
He was like working with the money and all of that.
Yep.
And at I'm not choosing to see people as villains. I'm just seeing them
Right.
as people who make good and bad decisions.
Right.
And it itself is reflective of them, who they want to be, who what they want to put out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it'll give you like a look at their psyche, at their psychology as well.
Yeah. Most definitely.
And at a certain point, I just saw Marco focusing more on like the numbers and the cause itself.
Mm-hmm.
He at a certain point he couldn't really empathize with Elle when she lost her brother.
Yeah.
He was talking more about the cause,
Yeah.
even though it was meant for people like Elle, and
Yeah.
he didn't he didn't really empathize anymore. He was just focusing on getting it done.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
especially when like near the end, he fed into Elle's grief as well. Like, you can get revenge,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and in most cases revenge isn't the answer.
Right.
It just the, the fight the fight just keeps continuing, like the situation it keeps escalating,
Yep.
and you can't really come to a understanding of
Mm-hmm.
either side.
Yep. That's it. I mean, you're really getting to certain core elements of the film, and you're articulating it in a great way that I haven't really, I haven't had many conversations like this, particularly about Marco. People like to avoid the Marco character, so I'm glad that we're tackling, because I think he's the most interesting in Friction. He's the one that's like, I mean, everything that we're bringing up, just because of what power did to him, and how power really took away his ability to empathize. And that's a huge part of Friction, is empathy and is understanding, because he kind of took advantage, and he exploited empathy to a degree with he exploited the victims of not having of the foster care system, not having a support system. He exploited L for the end, like you're saying. So, like I'm saying, he had the whole mentality of, by any means necessary, the ends justify the means. So that was really what he was gung-ho about, but I think that was his coping mechanism. And we got to look at it like that as well, because there is a psyche of Marco that is in every one of us, and we all cope certain ways to deal with your current situation. His was fighting so hard for a better end that things are going to be sacrificed along the way, and he sacrificed his empathy. And we saw what happened. We saw how that wasn't the way. We saw how it was the way in certain situations. So he was right and wrong in so many ways that it's such an interesting character to really analyze, just because I think he is really, and he has Black Latino roots, those are his roots. And I feel like that's just revolutionary in itself, because he's combining Black and brown, he's combining Black and brown in his whole entity. So I think that he's a very interesting character to look into. But you're bringing up great points that's so reflective of our current state right now, of humanity, because that's the point of fiction. There's friction with these opposing views, even if they're internal. See what I did there? Yeah.
Yes.
so yeah.
Yeah, I like that we got to see both sides of what happens with power. And
Yep.
even it, like, I'd say both sides, they're feeling like we're fighting for something good. Like, that's what they see from either side.
Right.
Like, the cops are like, we're trying to keep people safe, but they themselves are also sacrificing something. And but they themselves and people on the other side, they're also fighting for people who have lost family members and whoever else. They're trying to fight against the corruption.
Right.
But like, all these things can get lost along the way.
Yeah.
And especially if you're not gonna hold your members or anybody in the system with you or in your group accountable.
Yeah.
Like, if they step out of line, or if they do something questionable, and you're not going to call them out on that, or you're afraid to get the backlash, because in most cases people end up losing their job, losing a position, losing opportunities in life. That's one of the reasons why people won't do this.
Right. Yeah, no, you touched upon,
and I want to break that apart.
Yeah.
I don't want people to condone bad behavior in fear of losing something important to them. Some people end up losing their family or whatever, just so they could, and they just stay silent. And that's heartbreaking. Like, either way, doesn't matter. Either end.
Yep. And that's a great point that you brought up, because I sometimes lose the sight of the other side, and just even having that language of sides is sometimes harmful. But that's where we are. That's the verbiage that we do have right now, which is reflective of where we are in society. because when you are imposing sides, that means that it's one or the other against. And that is that same notion of sticking with your brothers, being your brethren, let me say. And it feeds into that, but it's also, that's where we're at. This is a battle of humanity. This is a fight. It's a fight against this systemic racism, and with the perspective of trying to provide safety for the people as the code of conduct for policing and the police force that has been so construed and lost. Like, we all are losing things as we're losing sight to the intention, because you're right, that was a intention later on, and of the origin is slave catching of policing. It was, it tried to transform into public safety, but that whole notion is what we need to reimagine. We need to reimagine what public safety looks like, because it is not what they're doing now. It's just not. Globally, not funding certain things in a community that needs certain resources for education and keeping that's a form of reimagining what we can do with that. That's reimagining public safety. If you're saying that it's safer to keep this money to fund our army, to protect our people, as opposed to funding a system where it provides books, then you got to reimagine that. See, that's where we're at right now. We're like, this is what we're thinking. We're understanding their perspective. We're understanding this is where the budget is all going to. But now we need to rethink that. Let's defund. Let's reallocate. And that's where we're reimagining public safety, because, cop, I don't feel safe around a cop. That's not how I feel. And I feel like that will vary, of course, depending on who you're speaking to. If you're speaking to a white woman, whole nother story. They are protected by white supremacy. They're the backbone of white supremacy. They're going to feel protected by cops, but that is not everyone. And that's why it's so ironic when people are all lives matter. It's just it's so ironic. Because what they're saying is not what they're doing, and it's not the case. So
they don't stand behind their words. They say all lives matter, but they're going to be discriminating against someone else.
Right. It's the biggest hypocrite. It's just so patriotic of them to say that. Just sticking to the roots, aren't you? Just very much ironic in the sense. But so that perspective, they are safe. They are comfortable in that bed that was made up of white supremacy. They are safe. So that's why it's like, when you understand that perspective, okay, let me show you how unsafe I feel. And then if you don't care, that's on you. That's on your humanity. That's on you. That's you not having empathy. And I don't know how people can live with that. I don't know how mothers cannot empathize with other mothers. It's to the core of like, just think about it. Reimagine what you're saying, and just trying to bring that about. And it's difficult, but reimagining public safety is really a part of that, because you're right. Many people see cops as a symbol of safety, but that's not the case. They're not providing safety for everyone, as we see over and over and over.
Like you said, we need to reimagine public safety. I feel that should be seen. Like, I feel like people should see the police as somebody that's going to help you out, like, in a situation, and that you're going to feel safe. That communication has to be there. That reform has to be there, because if something goes wrong, who are you going to call? And if that person is also going to be discriminating against you, then what are you going to do when something happens to you?
Right.
And people are going to be afraid to call the police, like, hey, my friend here was in like an accident or whatever, but the police arrive and they don't misinterpret the situation.
Yep.
And who is that really going to help? you
Yep.
won't feel safe. Like if something happens, you're not gonna want to call the police because
Right.
worse shit might happen. Oh,
Exactly.
sorry.
It's all right.
Sorry.
I thought I was gonna slip up. No,
uh,
it is
I
okay. And even further, I think that I don't know if reform is possible given the root. Remember, the core root is rotten. So that's why, I mean, the end goal is abolishing. The end goal is really trying to trying to restructure in a way that it's like that structure is not what we're doing. That building is not that foundation. That's not it. I'm not going on those floors. I'm not taking those stairs. I'm not taking that broken elevator to crash and die. I don't want to go in that building at all. I'm going to go in this building over here. Transformative justice. We are trying to help the behavior that led to that crime as opposed to just punishing the crime. And I feel like right now, the old building, that system, the cops, 911, that's not, I feel like they're not equipped. It's going to take us centuries to reform or to try to provide the training, try to provide the, equipping them. But we already have professionals. We have social workers. We have, other ways of really handling certain issues to de-escalate. But I don't think, and I'm pretty sure I don't even need to say I don't think, I know that cops are not trained in certain ways to handle certain situations that they're called for. And that's a huge part of this. If they're called for an incident and someone's going through a schizophrenic break and they don't know what that looks like because they have
it's gonna look scary to them.
Right.
They won't know what to do in that situation.
They won't know. They
Unless they have to like call someone up to guide them through that.
Right.
And they won't always know.
Right. That's the point. That's the point, that what we are funding these policemen to do, and the police force, policemen and women to do, is really out of their profession. They're not trained to do so much of what we're paying them to do. So that is what it's all about, defunding. It's like, why don't we actually fund the people who who can actually handle the situation? And there are professions for that. There are existing professions and existing resources for that. And we're not using them in that way because there's no budget to them. So that's really how we're just trying to deconstruct the status quo and the current system that it is. So even going further than reforming, because if you think about it, think about a bad apple, think about a leaf. I garden, and sometimes I'm looking at a plant, I'm like, there's not enough oxygen, there's not enough H2O, there's not enough fertilizer, there's nothing we can do here. It's to the point that you're just gonna have to live, you're gonna get pulled. And in that metaphorical sense, it could be decomposed. Just as I said in the beginning of this interview, my past self still used part of that. I'm still here, it's still the same body, it's really my mindset that I had to break down. So it's further. It's not like, hey, you guys are just going to be, disposed. That's not what I'm saying. It's like, there's more that we can do with what we can offer. And that's how we really have to reconstruct this conversation. Like, what else? You want to provide safety? Can you think about it doing it without a gun, Mr. Officer? How does that look? Can you do that? Is there a way to kind of open up our minds to create alternative solutions by creating alternative, entities of ourselves?
And in a way, defunding is a collective effort to call for that change.
Yeah.
It's like, we're not getting what we want. We're not getting that safety, so we're taking our money back. In a sense, we're not putting our money there. We're not condoning it.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And
we're not condoning that behavior.
Yes, exactly it. And it's a matter of, I don't know how many times I've called the cops. I could probably count it on my fingers. I think two, maybe. And the second was the most recent. I'm just giving one by default. There had to be one other time, maybe, But the most recent that I can remember was actually this year, and I was in an accident. But when I got in an accident, a truck driver stopped. He said, "I almost hit you." I was all kinds of messed up. I was kind of holding it together, but the truck driver stopped because I spun out. I spun at 5 times. I hit a guardrail, spun out 5 times. I was holding the rail I was holding my, the steering wheel, like just screaming no 5 times. 5th time it stopped. Get out the car because I'm like, wow, I don't want to blow up, And the truck driver, he pulls over and he comes out and he's like, I almost hit you. He was more shook than me. I was worried about my car. I loved my car. I was worrying about everything in it. I have my computer, my hard drives, my projects. They're my babies. So I was like, oh my God, my stuff. Can I get it? He's like, oh, chill. You almost died, And I'm like, yeah, you're right. He's like, I almost hit you because he's like, I almost killed you, And he helped. He brought out these cones. He was directing traffic. 2 other truck drivers stopped. They said, we're going to help you out until the cops come. If they were not there, a lot of people would have hit my car because I was in the middle of a highway and I don't even know how there was no traffic when I got into an accident. So it's like they formed this community. They were telling people, they were rushing people, they had the orange cones. And I was looking around like, I guess I should call the cops. I guess when they got there, that was a whole nother thing. They kind of they were really exerting their power. There was a lot of trash bags, or there was a lot of Ziploc bags that I was bringing back to my sister, and because she left them in my apartment, and they were all over the highway. They were ordering the truck drivers to pick every single one up. And I was looking at them like, aren't you going to ask me about what just happened? It was such a moment that I was like, I don't even know if they were even necessary. Everyone else helped in that way. So it's really reimagining, because there was a moment where I was like, I gotta, it's protocol. This is protocol. Got in an accident. Let me call the cops. But who was there when I needed them? The community. Everyone but the cop helped. And when he came, of course, the ambulance. That's who I really need. That's the only one I really needed, to get checked out, go to the hospital. The tow truck. There was a tow truck on the highway that stopped too. So it was such a moment that reflected how sometimes you're going to be in situations where you can think about it. Do I need to call 911? Think about it before doing it. In my situation, of course, to have the police report, there's a lot of things already built. That's why it's like some people are like, what are you going to do to people who, what are you going to do now? This is a transitional period. That's why defunding the police is a transitional period. Nothing ever happens overnight. Let's be real. Takes 9 months for us to even be here. There's not what's going on with that mindset? If you don't like the police, why are you using them still? No. But let's think about this. It's transforming away from a corrupt system.
Yeah, I like that. The community helping, the community, nobody yelling at each other. Just, oh, this happened. Let's get it clean up. Let's get stuff fixed up.
Yep.
Because we're seeing in other places, that's also what's happening. For instance, in Lebanon, after whatever that whole thing that happened there, the people didn't wait on the government. They were like, we live here. This is what we're going to do. We're going to clean everything up again together.
Yep.
And if they were to wait for the government to do everything, things wouldn't have been done the way the people did it. We as the community, we in a way hold up the city.
Yep.
We hold up ourselves.
Yep.
And if we're not going to be bigger people like that, then yeah, the corruption takes over everything.
Yep. And that's it. That's a great example. Another great example is Indigenous people, Native Americans. There's such an interesting call. I was speaking to, so I'm from Connecticut, and there are parts of Connecticut that's very involved with Native American communities because there are reservations that are in Connecticut. We have a couple casinos, so that's definitely a populated area. And I was speaking to one of my friends, and she was informing me of this call that occurs in a Native American tribe. And when you hear that call, there's something that occurs, and something is wrong, something goes wrong. And then there's a call. Everyone who hears that call stops what they're doing, goes to the source of the call, and helps. And that's used today. That is used today. And then for me, my Nigerian roots, I asked my mom about this because she was actually defending the police at some point. Not now. I love like we broke through. Like I saw her light, she saw my light, and we're our lights together now, right? So she doesn't feel this way anymore. She's supporting defund the police. Initially, she's like, "Who am I going to call? You know, what's going to happen? What's going to happen if people are speeding this and that?" And I'm like, "Mom, what did you do when you were growing up in your villa? Were there cops?" And she's like, "No." I'm like, "How did you guys solve problems?" She said, "Together." I said, "Well, look at that." You know, it's a matter of like you are from that. You were raised in that. And she's an amazing woman. You were raised, that's how you are amazing. You know, you saw the effect of just community support because you know each other. You are each other. So it's like you have, and of course, well, her father's a chief. My grandpa is a chief. And so there is some level of structure, but he doesn't have a star badge that looks just like the slave catcher badge. He's not in a uniform. You know, there are chief uniforms, but it's not the system we have now. Doesn't have a gun. He does not have a gun. I'll tell you that. He has a staff. He has a knife, but he doesn't have a gun because that's, you know, there are points in that we all can reflect upon. And my mom, you know, she wasn't a child too long ago. And there are certain, I guess, existing ways. There are existing alternative methods that we just need to educate ourselves on, you know, pick together, stitch together. Yeah, there's a way here. I think it's such a powerful time because there's such another way. There's multiple other ways. Finland. There's amazing structure there. So I say research into
I
Finland.
like Finland.
Yeah. There you go. So you probably already know.
Yeah. In most cases, compared to here, they've handled situations a lot better.
Yes,
I've noticed, and with their system and the way they've been handling certain situations have been a lot better.
Yep.
And unlike the U.S., they haven't had as many deaths by police brutality as
the U.S.
in the
right?
U.S. Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah. Oh, we are. Man, I was just thinking about, should I stay or should I go? I think every Black American is thinking that. And I have the access to. I love to travel. I've always been an international traveler. There's just so much work to do, but I know that there's so much work that can be done remote as well. But even learning from these systems, and of course, we're restricted with travel. My U.S. passport is, oh my gosh, like I'm like ashamed to bring out my U.S. passport, you know, for many reasons, given all the number of our cases and given the travel restrictions in general and the travel bans. That's why I'm very proud to have my Nigerian passport and being a dual citizen. So that I'm thinking about things with that as well, like how I could, interestingly, how I still can travel as a Nigerian as opposed to an American. I'm more free as a Nigerian. So there's just so much that I've been recently thinking about.
Yeah, it felt like in these types of situations, with the people, when you're talking to them about defunding the police,
Mm-hmm.
there have been people saying they actually want more police because they fear what'll happen without it. People who might uh, use that moment of unrest to take advantage. Like they have their own agenda, they have their own thing. Like, hey, I can make money off of this. Doesn't matter who it is, and people are afraid of that. So I feel in a way that they're dumping that responsibility on the police in hopes of getting that situation solved.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, the system will deal with it. But I'm not saying people should take situations like this into their own hands, but if they can stop something from happening or call someone out when they're doing something that shouldn't be done, that's morally or just wrong, then in a way you can help prevent it as a community.
Yes. Yep.
Like if a kid is like being all rude, bullying someone else, and perhaps even hurting, someone and the community is like, hey, cut that out, that's not how you do it, then some stuff within your within the communities itself can be prevented.
Yes, yes. Preventative measures. Yes, yes. And that starts with our upbringings. Very good point. The whole, what is that stupid idiotic saying? And I'm going to say those words. I usually don't, but in this case, it's so misogynistic that it's like, so we're enabling this. Boys will be boys. That phrase right there gets me every time. And it's just no. No, 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 no. We can't enable this behavior. We can't enable it. And that phrase in itself, that is a common phrase in the US. Boys will be boys. That can't be the case anymore. So
They're
that's
condoning that behavior by
huh?
saying that
Yes,
they're
yeah, it's encouraging. Exactly, exactly. And just having this really masculinized conception or this these gender roles, these boxes that we're putting our children in, that in itself is also enabling and activating these behaviors that grow into this racist adult that is upholding what they know. Because you only know what you know. So that's why it's like you're teaching this. So when it's being taught, it's not like how can you blame them, it's more so like they're going to have to do more work now, because the work wasn't done in their rearing, in their upbringing. So that's why white moms, let's talk, or talk to another white mom that is very conscious of all of this, because it's in the upbringing. It's all in the upbringing, because you're really inheriting this mindset. And when you're teaching someone how to walk a certain way, having to unlearn that way and walk a different way, and your brain literally, this from 0 to 7, that's the perfect time to teach someone. That's their brain being just most susceptible to learning and forming those gyres, forming, those bends and everything. Like that's when everything's being formed. So that's why it's so difficult right now, and why there is mass denial, because it's already been formed. But your brain's not dead. You can really do so much with knowledge. You can really introduce new synapses. You gotta introduce new synapses, and really try to deconstruct what you already think you know. That what you know, that your light. You got to deconstruct your light, your knowledge, in order to accept other light. And that's going to be work. And I feel like that should be really instilled in our educational system. I think that should be as a class, a core curricula. Like it needs to go deep in that. Like you've already misingrained so much information that was wrong. All right, let's start there. Let's start with the books that we're learning. Let's start with, with the educational system. I think that's one way, to answer your question from earlier. How do we help this misinformation? We got to fix this curriculum. We got to really start teaching our kids better, and just doing that work as adults.
Yes, and the fact that if somebody has a different opinion than yourself,
Yeah.
that you shouldn't just yell at them or make fun of them just because they have a different opinion, or else they won't, or else they'll put a block
Yep.
in front of new information.
Yep.
And they'll be afraid to listen to that and understand the other person's perspective, because they're gonna feel attacked. Like
Yep.
we shouldn't shame people for having a different opinion, but we can at least give them that hand, as in, come and see through my perspective. Like, you might not be able to fully understand it,
Mm-hmm.
but as long as we start making those steps
Yeah.
towards that, and being a person that listens to them, and also having them listen when you talk, like, it's communication, man.
Mm-hmm.
Verbal and nonverbal communication. It's very important.
Yeah. Most definitely. And it's definitely difficult at this point, because that puts the work on us to be able to kind of suffer through hearing other people's opinion, and not backlashing, and not really being completely yourself. So that's also so much work on the person who is trying to help, which is why I always push that it should come from your own. This type of relearning needs to come from your own, because it is so frustrating trying to, and you fall into yelling. You fall into, that behavior that is, closing the other person off. But then it's also giving them, it's very difficult, because when you're holding off, you're kind of letting them not hold off too. You have to find a middle ground. That's why it's very important to understand who's teachable. Who is teachable? And that's huge, because if someone is not teachable and you're sitting there being so patient, but you are internalizing anger, you're internalizing everything that you're feeling in sake of just for their comfort, in order for you to try to see their perspective, but they're still very comfortable, you're risking your own comfort. You're risking a lot of your own self-care in that moment. So some are not teachable. And those we need to understand. That's a huge part of this as well. Who is teachable? Because it's not going to take all, it's going to take enough. You don't need all. We just need enough. And that's support. Those are allies. Those are people to understand. We just need enough people to. It doesn't take all. So we need to know when it's time. Okay, you're not teachable. That's it. That's it. Then they will probably follow someone else who looks like them, who was teachable, and they'll follow.
Yes.
Some people are not meant to.
You can't force it. You can't force it.
I had to learn that, by the way. Like, I'm speaking this now today, August 9th, 10th, August 10th, 2020. This is what I know now. And I understand I did not know that before. Just a disclaimer, because I've grown. I grow every day. As I'm saying, I'm learning every day. And I definitely was frustrated with people, and it took me a while to really get to this level of emotional intelligence to be able to not engage in that behavior. So it takes the work of the self as well, but also take care of yourself. When you're getting to that level, exit the combo. Like, you don't need to. And that person might not be teachable then in that moment. I wasn't teachable years ago. 6-7 years ago, I wasn't teachable. It's going to be a process. So it's important to remember our own paths on our current journey, as well as we're encountering other people on their journey, because we need to be kind to their journeys. And I really am like talking to my past self. I really am. But yeah,
definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be nearing the end of the interview soon, because I might have to talk with you a lot more about this and in the future. But for one interview, this is
a lot.
Yeah. We don't want to overwhelm the viewers as well, because this is also a bit complex for some people. They don't go as far as we usually go here, actually, like really deep in the layers. So my closing question is, what's the advice you have for the youth? What is something you wish you've known and that you want to share?
Yeah, I think I might have just given it, actually. But I'll kind of reiterate it in the sense of understanding other people's journeys, and really try to move with love and kindness. I know it's going to be hard for the young G's, the young Z's, the young millennials, all of you. It's going to be hard for, because you're so unapologetic, and I love that. That fire, that has really been fueling the movement. So we love that. We need that. But it needs to also, I just feel like sometimes I feel like I'm in the middle, because I deal with a lot younger than me and then a lot older than me, right? And you guys are all very similar. These different generations, the older generations and the younger ones, you have no idea how similar you guys are. And I'm sorry that you all are. See, I'm correcting myself. It's a process. I'm trying to eliminate guys as, the general term from my language. It's going to take time. I slip up. It's okay. If someone heard that and was offended with that, and then now they're not listening to anything I said before and after, that's not right. Because what I said before, I think we have some dope knowledge that we're sharing. And all because I slipped up and they were unforgiving, you lost all this other light that you could have had. So that's an example of what I'm saying, that when you are so adamant about your opinion and so adamant about being the rightest, the right one in the room, you lose so much knowledge. You lose so much knowledge. And that's why I'm seeing that with the older generation as well as the younger generation. The older generation is saying some crazy stuff. Not crazy, let me not see. I'm correcting myself again. They're saying information and sharing light that I don't necessarily agree with, that can block other people's knowledge and opinions. And they're very outdated. Let me say that. And I'm still listening, and I'm still trying to understand a way to show them, to bridge to another source of knowledge. But I'm not shutting them off. I'm not saying right away, you're wrong. A quick example, a person I work with, I won't get into too much detail, said defunding the police is stupid. That's what they told me. And I just was like, okay, why do you believe that? I didn't say you're wrong, don't call me stupid. I'm just like, why do you
I
say
like
that?
that. I like that. Like, you ask them a question like why they think that way, instead of getting all up and being like, you're this, you're that. Like, no, you just like ask them.
Ask them why.
And I feel that they in a way will feel a bit more safe, a bit more open around you, because they'll feel like their opinion is being listened to, and they'll be open to you as well and receiving information from you.
Yeah, exactly it. So always seek knowledge and asking why they believe that way. Ask about their beliefs, and you're going to hear very interesting follow-ups and conversation ensue, because that's what occurs with the older generation. Younger generations beneath me, younger than me, I totally understand. You guys are born into a wealth of knowledge, digital natives. Like, you guys have resources that are like ingrained in you. You're 2 years old and you're better than iPhone usage than me. And I understand that. And I'm not going to feel, some older folk are going to feel threatened by that they're losing their respect. Respectability is huge with the older generations. That's what we grew up into. I grew up in a culture that you respect your elders, period. If I don't believe in what they're saying, they're older than me. Oh, well, no. See, it's really understanding that. So it's really seeking that understanding. It's been a process. It's been a process for me, really trying to take what I've learned from my culture, upbringing, and letting go what I've learned as well, because there are a lot of oppressive beliefs in the Nigerian culture that we're not in sync. But that doesn't mean that I don't love my grandfather, who raised my mom to believe that it doesn't matter if you look like a boy or you look like a girl, you're my child and you're going to be whoever you want to be. He was so like, even like some people would misgender her, and he's like, okay, yeah, she's a boy today. Like, if she's allowed to work with me and you're not being uncomfortable because she has a shaved head and you think she's a boy, whatever. He let that happen. So, and he has no idea how fluid that was, and how that impacted my mom. Because then she has this mentality, she could be anyone and do anything. And that's what got her to America. So there's so much beauty in these cultures, in the past, and these beliefs of people who are older than you, that we got to find that beauty. So to being respectable in the sense of trying to move in kindness and hearing why they believe a certain way. Yeah, why? Asking why they believe. I think that's what you can take away from this. My very long-winded answer.
Thank you very much
Yes.
for answering my questions and being a part of this.
Yeah.
I felt that I wanted to have you here so people can see your perspective, see your view on
Yeah.
this, because I haven't really seen a lot of people asking you, like, from where I've been. I haven't really seen a lot of people talking with you about this or asking you many
Yeah.
questions. Like, I feel asking questions is one of the things that we should all do
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
to
Most
gain
definitely.
more knowledge. Doesn't matter who it is. Like, you got to be respectful, of course, like,
Right.
even if you don't agree with the person, but
Mm-hmm.
you need to know why,
Right. Right.
so we can come
Exactly.
to a better understanding.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So thank you for being a part of this interview.
Um, I'm so glad. Uh-oh, you there? Oh,
Yeah,
you
I'm
are
here.
okay. It like froze a little. Uh-oh. Um,
Yeah.
I'm just so glad, and I feel really proud, even though we don't know each other to an extent, but it's really refreshing to speak to you, Rin, and what you're doing. So just continue, because what this is doing, you're providing a platform for our voices. You're providing a platform for the marginalized. You're providing this way of this global connection, this global majority that we are. And that's what I'm really all about, is global majority, because globally this is occurring. Globally, we are combating this. And globally is how we're going to join together to win. And not even just to win, just to excel, to excel through. So I appreciate you and what you're doing. And thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I saw there was like people asking for stuff like this, and
Nice.
like other people weren't really like, they were like, yeah, we'll do it but later, but it wasn't their main
Mm,
focus. And
mm,
I had enough free time, and with the kind of person I am,
yeah.
I decided, why don't I start?
Yeah.
Why
Mm-hmm.
don't I put my first steps into building all of this
Great.
and helping others in this way.
Yes. Yes. That's so
And
important.
soon everything will start to fall into place, and
Mm-hmm.
people will start helping each other.
Yep.
Is my goal,
Mm-hmm.
lifting
Yeah.
each other up.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you for doing it. I hope
You're
that
welcome.
people will see and follow suit. I think it's inspirational. Yeah, it's inspiring. Woo, go Rin.
My, my classmates have like a little nickname for me. They're like, "You're our little Joe Rogan." Like, it's like adorable because
Yeah.
they look up to these people. They look up to these YouTubers and how they talk and how they communicate with each other.
Yeah.
Even though not all of them might not be right, but
Yeah.
they like seeing people's voices being heard.
Mm-hmm.
People uh, having a place where people can express their opinion.
Right.
So I like to, yeah, that's why made this, because it felt like
Mm-hmm.
people's voices were being silenced, and they were being kept away from each other, not
Mm-hmm.
being able to communicate, even though
Yeah.
we're in such a digital age. We have like
Yeah.
blockages that's
Mm-hmm.
preventing us from coming together and actually lifting each other up.
Yep.
So thank you for being a part of this.
Yeah. Of
And for
course.
the viewers out there, thank you as well. And uh, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Share it with
Yes.
your friends. And if you have questions, just write them down in the comment section. Perhaps in the future we can answer them.
Yeah.
And when commenting, please be respectful. And we'll be here the next time. So
Yes.
see
Part
you
two.
guys next time. And
Woo.
I hope you have a wonderful day
Yeah.
after this. And much luck to you in what you are doing and helping others.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. It's gonna
You're
be a great
welcome.
day.